last time we stopped right here at the Freedom Ride, so we're going to pick up right where we were. And the Freedom Rides were nothing more than a bunch of buses that were going to tour the South and try to visit multiple locations and try to break what they consider those unjust laws, those Jim Crow laws. This is going to be led by James Farmer and Core. And these buses, as you can see, start at Washington, D.C. on May the 4th. Now, they are going out there. They're telling people where they plan to stop. They tell these people what what the intentions were, and that was to go out there and break these laws. And they wanted the national press to follow them around because if the national press follows them around and records all this stuff, it's going to be showing there on one of the three news networks and or three channels at that point in time because there were no multitude of channels in which we have today. And this is going to be on TV nonstop. And the goal is to get the American viewers to have some kind of a sympathy or some kind of a desire to want to see this change. And you can see here, these riders are going to go by May 9th. Riders are assaulted in a bus terminal in Rock Hill, South Carolina. The 14th in Alabama, buses is set on fire. A lot of them are beaten. This is the actual one that gets one of those Molotov cocktails thrown into it, and all the passengers rush off the bus. And when they rush off the bus, there are a bunch of people that were probably in the KKK or something like that. There were baseball bats, chains, different things like that. As you can see, white people were involved in this as well. Got a lot of people. This guy right here, matter of fact, this very famous picture. He was off the bus. Everything was fine. Some white guy comes up to him holding a baseball bat and says, "Hey man, you okay?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm okay." And the next thing you know, he gets decked in the head with the baseball bat. Um, this is really showing how unjust the South is. And like I said, this is making that national news. People are watching this. People are becoming very sympathetic, and a huge desire in them is starting to arrive and starting to say, this crap in America needs to change now. Eventually, they're going to have to cancel this because it was getting too out of hand. It was getting too violent. The president steps in and says, guys, I'm very sympathetic to your cause, but at the same time, I cannot allow you to put your lives on the line because they were starting to get into areas, as you can see here, in Louisiana and Alabama. And those states were very hostile, very violent, and a lot of protesters that wind up going there never return. And so these people had a tremendous amount of courage because they have to get on these buses, break these unjust laws, and they cannot respond with any type of retaliation. They are told, look, if somebody attacks you, do not attack back because all of this is going to make the news. And if one person strikes back, then people might say, well, they're trying to start this fight and they're trying to cause something. And they were trying to cause something. They were trying to get Americans to open up their eyes, see that the world in which, or the America in which they see things, is a lot bigger and there's a lot more problems and things need to change as a nation. So we got a question here and says, why do you think the Freedom Riders chose the route that they did? And as you see, they are going through all of the states here in the South, the most efficient path that they could find to try to break these laws, draw that national attention, and get people on board with this. And they were very successful in doing that. And this is happening in 1961. JFK is your president. And while he was running for election, he had promised to make things change, particularly for African Americans, and give them some of the civil rights that they were desiring. And that would come in time, but not until a couple other events had to happen. First event that had to happen was the Albany March in Georgia, and this is called the Albany Movement. Now, this movement involves Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. here, but he's not the guy who actually started it. This is a huge battleground for the civil rights, and these people have been planning this movement for quite some time, and Martin Luther King Jr. jumps on board and tries to kind of take over it. And he learns some very valuable lessons here. First valuable lesson, don't do anything unless it's yours and you start it. Because if you are a big name person and you jump on somebody's movement and you try to piggyback or try to help, they can become very resentful of that. So that's one way in which this movement is going to not work. And trust me, Dr. King will learn a lot of valuable lessons from this. And also, it didn't help that the police chief in the area had been studying these marches, and he realized that if the jails start to overflow, you're going to have to let people out because you can't hold thousands of people for doing some kind of a petty crime that today you would not go to jail for. I mean, imagine this. You go to a water fountain, get you a drink, and the next thing you know, you're arrested. That is completely messed up. Matter of fact, it's beyond messed up. The words I want to use right here, I can't use. That's how dumb and this whole idea of segregation is. Anyways, the police chief noticed that the jails would not hold everybody. So he went around to neighboring counties and said, empty all your jails. And therefore, he had a multitude of jails he could send these people to. The jails will never fill up. And as you can see here, this person's saying, open them cells. Well, there were plenty of cells that he could throw people in for committing these insignificant crimes like using the wrong restroom or going to the wrong water fountain, so on and so forth. He also made sure that the national press was kept out. You can see some of the press in the area. These are local people. Local people were thinking just like the people in the South were at that point in time. And there was no way in the world they were going to print any type of press or show any type of press that was going to be very sympathetic towards Dr. King or any other African American. And the last thing is that the city officials refused to work with Dr. King. They went to lesser known people and tried to work out something with them. And so King, when this is all said and done, learns a couple lessons. First lesson is location. Choose your location very wisely. Uh, the police chief Prickett was very smart, and a better location should have been chosen. You should have chose a police chief that wasn't going to follow this same type of strategy. Make sure that national press gets in there. That's the next lesson that he learned. And the third one, and the most important one, was that don't piggyback on anything. Just go ahead and do it yourself. That way you can see the plan unfold and it works the way that you envisioned it. And nobody can get mad at you. People want to help, that's fine, but make sure that everybody is on the same page. Here we got a bell ringer, but there's no sense in doing bell ringers right now, but we will go through these questions as a quick review. So just think of it as that. Benefits of nonviolent protest. Okay, you go out there, you protest, you're not committing any type of violence, and violence is being committed against you. Therefore, you look like the person who is right. The people committing the violence look like they are wrong. That was very beneficial for these people. Boycotts hurt the economy because nobody's using that type of good or service, and therefore, you want to hurt a company, go ahead and hit them in their wallet. They will change over time. Right now, a lot of American companies are not being boycotted, but they are shut down, and they are really hurting during this tragic time in which we are in right now. And so companies are trying to figure out ways in which they can survive, and the government is trying to step in and trying to help them out as well. I know that has nothing to really kind of deal with this situation of segregation, but these think of it like now. There are a lot of companies out there right now that are probably not going to come back because they're suffering that bad. And there were some companies that African Americans boycotted and they didn't come back during this time of Jim Crow South. Next question says, why doesn't segregation make sense economically? Well, that one's pretty simple. Economically, if you have two schools, well, that's two light bills. You have a water fountain. Well, that's two water fountains that you got to pay for. If you want to have separate bathrooms, that's more bathrooms you got to build. So on and so forth. It never made sense economically to do segregation, but yet they still did it. Maybe they should go back to civics and economics and take a lesson again. What is a sit-in? We talked about what sit-ins were. Those were going into public places, sitting down, asking for a service, and you would not leave until you got that service or whatever the case may be. In the Freedom Rides, we went through that, and that's where they got on those buses and they went and toured through the South and broke all those unjust laws, received all that national press. So that takes us to the very famous Birmingham campaign. The Birmingham campaign was famous because it got so much national attention. Now, King had been planning this for quite some time. He had learned from the problems there in the Albany movement, and he's going to not use older African Americans because older African Americans are very sympathetic to the cause and the desires of civil rights and things like that, but they also have responsibilities. And if they are thrown in jail or completely blacklisted or something like that, how can they provide for their families? And so the young African Americans are going to jump on this. Now he's going to do all this training in different churches. And in these churches, they're going to be the appearance of conducting normal sermons and things like that, but they are actually training to respond to this violence by being not violent. And so that was a huge step in victory for Dr. King. Now, Dr. King is going to train these people for quite some time. This is not like you're going to come in there one time and all of a sudden you're an expert at nonviolent protest. They will do this in different steps. Steps might be you first time you get yelled at, the next time you get actually hit. And these people were aware of what was going to come. They were told, look, the punishment is going to be very severe. And as you can see here, you got the very famous picture of the water hoses. I'm pretty sure that thing stings a lot. I'm pretty sure that these people didn't have any clothes on. It probably ripped the skin off of them. We've got the attack dogs. And these people cannot respond to violence in any type of way. And this was just showing people in America watching at home that these people are really brave. They are very passionate about changing things. And as people watching this, people are saying, this has got to change. This campaign also consisted of sit-ins as well as the marches that we've seen. The police chief in the area was very racist and did not prepare for this movement. He didn't even see it coming. The national press is all everywhere. And Martin Luther King Jr. actually gets arrested. And there's no room in the jails to hold everybody. And so while Martin Luther King Jr. is in prison, or actually jail, he writes a very famous letter known as the Birmingham Jail Letter, or the letter from the Birmingham Jail. He responds to people who are criticizing him from the local churches, saying that he's brought all this evil and injustice into this town. And he responds by saying, I haven't brought it here. I'm just showing you it right now, and I'm showing the rest of the world it as well. And so later on, he's going to be released. This will become a huge victory for the civil rights movement and Dr. King himself. We'll skip that. And so Kennedy is one of these people that's watching all this, and he's very slow at the start to try to get civil rights through. But as he sees the Birmingham movement unfold, he gets on national television and he says, look, we are going to have to come up with some kind of a civil rights plan, some kind of a deal, some kind of an action. And he is going to propose that Civil Rights Act. Now, Kennedy gets the ball rolling on all this. However, though, as we know, he gets shot later on, and President Johnson will go ahead and get it done with establishing that Civil Rights Bill. Next person we're going to talk about today and finish up with is Medgar Evers. Medgar Evers, at that point in time, was a less known member of the Civil Rights Movement if you were outside of Mississippi. However, though, people in Mississippi knew this guy, and he was accomplishing a lot of things like getting people registered to go out there and vote, getting people to actually protest. On the night that JFK was giving his civil rights speech or the plan for it, Medgar Evers was pulling into his driveway. And as he pulls into his driveway, a guy is sitting there by the name of Byron D. LaBeckwith. He's in a set of bushes across the road with a sniper rifle. Medgar Evers gets out of his vehicle, he's shot and killed in his own driveway. His wife and his sons and everybody else have to go out there and just watch him pretty much bleed out right in front of them. Beckwith gets away with the crime, brags about it for nearly 30 years, and eventually the state mounts enough evidence against him. They charge him again during the 1990s, and he's found guilty, and he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Good movie to watch on that is The Ghost of Mississippi. It's got some pretty good actors in it. Check it out if you get a chance. Now, overall, though, his death and the work that he accomplished will make the Civil Rights Act more powerful. A lot of people are really going to jump on board with this, particularly in some of those really bad states such as Mississippi. All right, everybody, continue working on your stuff. Miss y'all. Take care. If you need anything, get up with me. Here to help.